Hello and welcome to another episode of the Under the Pines podcast. I'm your host, Emanuel, and in today's episode, I talked to my brother, Jaguar Heart. We looked forward to this episode, and it turned out to be one of my favorites on the pod so far. Jaguar is a really high-level therapist and coach. He's, in my opinion, one of the best in his field. That's why I also worked with him a couple of years ago. And we covered a lot of ground. You know, he has a very healthy understanding of what really goes on in this world. And that's why, I enjoyed talking to him. So we covered so much. I won't go into details here in the intro. If you have an hour, I would advise you to sit through it. There's plenty of nuggets in there, and you will get a lot of value out of this, I promise. And so let's jump right in, and I hope I'll see you in the next one. Hello, Jack.
How we doing?
Hey, man. So we worked briefly, like probably 2 years ago, I think. And
around that.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. And in the prep for this podcast, because, obviously a lot has happened since then. And I worked, through a lot of my personal stuff and had a lot of, work with other people. And so I wasn't exactly 100% sure anymore what we worked through. But whilst looking into that, it was interesting because I literally noticed that it's kind of full circle, because I had these two moments, right, in this past couple months where it definitely attached to what we worked on, right? Because we worked on trust, we worked on, some stuff with my mother. And yeah, it was very, very profound, because I realized that sometimes it takes like 2 years, right, to fully integrate.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It can take, one thing that I have never been able to figure out with this work that I do is I will speak into these unconscious parts that are within us to make it emerge, essentially. And it will sit in the unconscious and germinate, and it will grow and it will grow and it'll grow. Man, I get messages from people 3, 4, 5 years since I've worked with them go, man, I was walking down the street and a lightning bolt went off in my head. And the thing you said to me in 2019 or something like that finally landed and my body released. It's wild, man. I haven't been able to figure it out, and I'm kind of okay with not figuring that out. But, it can take a little bit of time for us to catch up with where we need to be in order to digest that, where it lands fully.
Yeah, definitely. And also when you re-listen to that stuff, it definitely resonates differently, right? Because you actually, if you did the work, right, like you work through it. And now when you listen to that work back then, it's a different language, right? Like it sits differently. It basically it vibrates differently. And that's what's so beautiful about it. Because I can just, take one example from that, like, because we had to work on trust. Like I had difficulties in trust, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what the first situation that I had, right, where someone else that I loved was in a situation where their life was at stake. I had two choices, right? I had the choice, okay, let's do the doctors, let them do whatever they want to do, or I trust, right? I trust my instincts, I trust God, I trust the universe that this will be okay. And that's what I did, right? And I fully surrendered, and I said, okay, let's do this, right? And that was the birth of my son, right? Like these, couple weeks ago. And that was very, very interesting, because it's such a fine line, right? Like you have this fear maybe come up, right? Like you have this doubt, and then you say, okay, this is actually the moment now to test what I should really focus on, right?
Yeah, it's powerful as well. When we can't trust, we seek to control things. But trust was a huge thing for me. I remember when I resolved my trust piece, and it was through the reflection of this beautiful woman that came into my life. And man, afterwards, once I let it go, I got a stomach bug for 12 days. So it was just my body was going, cool. It's like, you can let go now. And I did. And then ever since that moment, it was just, I realized that there's this divine architecture to this. It sounds spiritual and all the rest of it, and it is, but we really don't know what's going to happen. We really don't know what's going to go on. And when your child chooses you to come through, there's so many forces that we don't know, where it's like, it's almost like God says, trust me and I'll take care of you, because I've taken care of you your whole life anyway. You just haven't really acknowledged it. But there's so many forces to go with it, like the complex structure of a child coming through from the soul and the sperm and the egg, just all of it, man. It's so magnificent that we, with our human minds, think that we're in control of that. It's almost laughable once you get it, and then once you start to see the gift in life, which is what I was given about 9 months ago. Actually, maybe not 9, close enough, doesn't matter. Now I can see the gift in absolutely everything, every interaction, every opportunity. It's nothing but this beautiful gift that I get to witness all the time. It's like being Neo in the Matrix. I just see the code to everything now, and it's amazing. So I'm so happy for you, man, that I could be a part of that journey with you.
Yeah, thank you. No, it was great. Like, definitely, because even during the process, the doctor, she asked me, like, you guys believe in something, right? And I'm like, yeah. And then she's, yeah, but into Catholicism and in the church. I'm like, no, there's something greater than that. And then she looked at us. She's like, okay, let's just leave it at that, right? Because here I'm in Croatia right now, right? I'm still, and everybody, runs to the church on Sunday, right? Like probably 95%, I would say. I'm used to, right? Like me, the same. And like, I mean, I know you talked about this a lot, and it's that thing, that kind of you probably have to get to yourself, right? Like to fully grasp what's going on, right? Like that it's part of the indoctrination system, in my opinion. And I was even an altar boy when I was younger, and
Same.
yeah, so it's, yeah, I think there it opened my eyes, because I was looking down on people, right, from the top, and I would always see the same people in the same seat and always with the same face, right? Like, and it's mostly a negative kind of demeanor that they were carrying. And I'm like, why the fuck are these people the same way every single week? They cry all the time, right? Like, why is this happening? And I don't know how old I was, maybe 11 or so. And I'm like, okay, this cannot be healthy, right? There has to be something better than this, like something that makes more sense, right? And yeah, so that was definitely interesting. But I mean, if you want to talk about that topic, we can go into that for a bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I read the Bible last year. I actually had a near-death experience. It was pretty interesting. I was in a pretty difficult relationship, and there was an immense amount of stress on me at the time. And I woke up having tremors, and then they turned into seizures. And I just knew it was my time. I knew. I was like, I'm out. This was September 22 that it happened. So it would have been close to around the time that we were working together, actually. And yeah, I felt like it was like Velcro ripping, and then it was just everything went white. It was only very quick. Well, I don't know if it was quick or not, but it felt quick. And I was in a field of white light, and then Jesus was there, and I was like, okay, back in my body. I didn't really appeal to it, and I'd never really looked at Christianity from a perspective of a belief system. I went to Catholic schools, but I was way too defiant to ever take any of that stuff on. I didn't like school. I didn't like the government. From like 4 years old, basically, I was like anti-authority, right? Church is just another form of authority. Now, people can get a lot out of it. Some people are happy in that space, and if that's what they want, and if that's for them, great. The woman that I was with actually became a born-again Christian, and we split as a result of that. So I thought, look, I've read a lot of esoteric texts, Gnosticism, Eastern philosophies, all of it. I thought, well, why don't I read the Bible? And a lot of people online were going, have you become a Christian? Have you become this? I said, look, when I explore something, I never knee-jerk into it and say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. I'm seeking to understand it. I'll give it a year. And if after a year, I will have made my decision. Anyway, I got to 9 months, and I just was like, this isn't for me. Something's not landing for me in this. And I see the influence of it throughout the world, and I see the mechanisms of control. If it's a system that's meant to purify, then the system wouldn't be able to contain the evil which is perpetrated in it. And I had a guy ask me, he said, I was quoting Krishnamurti on my page, which Krishnamurti has taught me an immense amount. He's helped me a lot. He's dead now, but his work has. And he said, why? He goes, oh, so you're back in the occult. And I said, no, I'm just quoting Krishnamurti. And he goes, why are all occultists okay with deception? And I said, I don't know, I'm not an occultist, but, there's a lot of Christianity, a lot of deception that's in every system. And he goes, well, where could you show me that the deception is in Christianity? I said, that's the wrong question. The question is to say, where isn't it? And then he didn't answer that, obviously, because it cornered him. And it wasn't about being right. It was just about being objective around it. Once you put these systems in the hands of people where there is a control mechanism of authoritarian power, and you have to give your power away, it keeps a master-slave construct going. It keeps a subservient dominance construct going. It keeps the will of the people giving their sense of self away to something to save them. And that's very convenient in the world in a time when everyone's kind of tested and the world seems to be getting pretty hectic. And so I'm not surprised there's a lot of people going to Christianity at the moment, because it's like the collective unconscious that Jung talks about. All these things are handed down to us, and then we take them on and they become part of who we are until we resolve them.
Yeah, because it's easier to kind of just focus on external stuff, right? Like they give you stuff to read, they give you stuff to repeat, right?
Yep.
Like you're chanting all the same stuff, but it's difficult to look inward and actually face your shit, right? Like that's the difference in it. So
Totally. And that's like, the process of individuation. Are you familiar with this?
yeah, but go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, cool. So individuation is the process of becoming a whole individual, and it's about reintegrating the split that happens internally. And a split will happen when there's an external savior and an internal need to be saved. And we spend probably the first half of our life turning outward to get our basic needs met. Most people don't transcend that because they don't ever really get a fulfilling lifestyle from it. So then when you start to go through the individuation process, which is merging our tension of opposites internally and dissolving and transcending whatever trauma or inner conflicts that we have within the shadow, and also in the anima and the animus, which Carl Jung talks about. And then the self emerges from that, which is true authenticity in the absence of distortion. So what happens from that is then you don't need that. You don't need to give anything away to anything external anymore. And so those systems prey on that need for that turning outward aspect, which is predator-prey construct as well. So it's like predator-prey. There's a reason why prey and prey are the same word, essentially. And if you're looking outward, you're going to constantly be turning outward, giving your power away to a savior, which is, by virtue of being human, it's going to make you easier to control. And when I saw the turning inward, and I turned inward, and I've healed all of my childhood trauma, I'm in a continual place of peace and joy. I don't really get attached to anything anymore. And I can let people come with love, and I can let people go with love. And there's no judgment around it. That is not from taking on a religious stance. That is through the process of individuation and turning deeply inward to know God within, as opposed to waiting for someone to take me to him.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. I mean, that's what it is, right? Like it's all within us, and it's impossible to control one when you're kind of happy with what you got, right? Like,
yeah,
what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, right? Like you're gonna throw some goodies in front of him. He's like, yeah, sure, I've had this, but it doesn't interest me anymore. I mean, you also, I didn't know that at the time when we worked together, but like we had some similarities in our 20s, right? Like I was also like deep into drugs and all the external life and the partying and all that crap. Like, when did you really feel that shift that you said, okay, this part of me is gone? Because like with me, it's fully gone. I don't drink any alcohol anymore, even, right? Which is kind of major for me, but and that's also just happened through the last 2 years, right? And but when did that happen for you, and how did that come about?
Just the drugs part, or
yeah, like that's attached to that, right? Like
yeah. So the drugs and alcohol was about 8-9 years ago now, where I moved to the mountains in New Zealand because I just had to get away. My soul was like, you need to get away. And so I've become more in tune with that, and that's become easy for me to deal with. But I remember it wasn't necessarily the drugs that were the issue, because I slowly got away from them. I became unsatisfied with sitting around. I was a womanizer, drug taker. My nickname was Wolf of Wall Street guy in Sydney. It's like, you can let your imagination deal with that. But it was just vacuous. And one of the mistakes that I realized I made, which still to this day is one of my biggest, it's not a regret, I just realized it was my biggest mistake, was sleeping with women I didn't care about. And that, I created the women now, which are, not set up to have healthy relationships because I was such a womanizer. I posted this on the weekend actually, where I said, when you don't remember how many women you've slept with, then that becomes a problem. And I wouldn't know how many. It's a lot. And I wish I'd never done that. But I know that that was part of my path, because now I've been celibate for a year and a half. And I don't really have a problem with women, but I'm just being discerning, because the next person I sleep with, I'm going to make sure she's the mother of my children. And so I kind of have to go through this process where I realized that this was empty, this was vacuous. I felt lifeless. And the more drugs I took and the more women I slept with, the emptier I felt. And I started to hate myself for it. And it was like, I need more and more and more. So I moved to the mountains of New Zealand, and lived on a farm there with my ex-girlfriend. Didn't drink, didn't do anything, and just faced the pain, man. And that was really the first step in moving away from all of that. I don't drink anymore. I could have a beer now. It wouldn't faze me, but I like to feel sharp, on point. You know, I've done some psychedelics, which I am a fan of. Like, I don't partake in that a lot. They've helped me a lot. But around the sort of recreational drugs and all of that, all they do is reinforce a negative emotional addiction and attachment to like deprivation or control, something like that. And that's what you got to clean up, that emotional negative addiction. The drugs aren't addictive. It's the addiction to the negative emotional attachment, which people don't really understand around addiction, in my opinion. That's just what I've worked with and I've seen within myself. And it helped to get away from that.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, but for me, it was because I never felt like I belonged, right? Like I never felt like I fit in, right? That's also what we worked on. And it's the same thing. I think it's that vicious cycle, right? Like it's women, drugs, it's just external, right? It's like the partying, like you just do everything you can to not face yourself, right?
Yeah, and it's funny. And then, like, you know, you stop taking the drugs and you're awake at 6 a.m. and then you got to go home, and it's crushing, man. It's way worse. That come down and being alone, oof, man. And it takes 2 weeks to recover.
Yeah, crazy times. But yeah, I also think that we have to go through this. You know, not everybody, but I mean, I had to go through this to realize, you know, what life is all about. And I had to, you know, because all that lifestyle basically pulled in a lot of wrong people into my life. And these people actually taught me, you know, what I had to face and what I was doing wrong. And same thing, you know, also had a relationship in my late 20s, you know, ended up in a big bang, also cost me, you know, friendships and stuff like that. And I'm very grateful for that, though, you know, now. Before it was painful, but now definitely very grateful, because it made me, you know, develop into what I am right now. Because I actually said, okay, this has to be me, right? This cannot be the other person, because they keep showing up, right? Like it will always keep showing up.
Life will force you to face it, you know, like there's this inner tension that we have. It's an inner conflict. This is the tension of opposites. And when we don't deal with it, I say this, which is one of my favorite quotes, is life will come for you. Life will come for you. And whether you want to deal with it or not, you can give it to Jesus, to Muhammad, to whatever. Doesn't matter. You are going to be forced to deal with what's going on within your unconscious psyche, whether you want to deal with it or not. And what will happen is, if you don't deal with it, you'll start to get sick. You'll start to destroy everything. You'll lose everything. You'll get cancer. You'll die early. You'll have a heart attack, because the body just can't keep taking on the inner stress, creates inflammation, creates problems. So while there is a real beauty in the story of Jesus being the savior and all of that, if you don't clean up what's in your consciousness, it will get you. You can't help but attract it in. You'll call it fate, as Carl Jung says. And until you reconcile that, life will force the event on you to deal with. And it'll be a tap on the shoulder, then it's a shake, then it's a slap, then it's like, all right, send in the big guns, and you get someone that comes in and wrecks your life, like the train being hit. Like someone will come in, a sickness will happen, whatever your soul is going, oh mate, this guy's not listening. Send in the big guns to get it, you know, and it can finish you off if you're not careful with it. So it's a journey where every single person has to go through. That's why we're here, I believe.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, with me, it was a car accident and, you know, bike accidents and stuff like that. Even one car accident, I don't know how I survived it, because I shouldn't have. And then later, because I didn't learn, right, it didn't change enough. And then later I had this nerve pain coming through an old injury that I didn't even know about, right? Like excruciating pain, you know, for weeks I couldn't sleep. And just like you also had insomnia and all that I mean, it's horrible, but that's exactly it, right? It just kept showing up stronger and stronger until you're in so much pain that you have nothing else to be like, either you're gonna kill yourself, right, or you change. It's two
100%. And
options. Yeah.
which killing yourself from a metaphorical standpoint is a force of change, right? And yeah, I had insomnia, my heart enlarged. I was having brain zaps. I was having seizures, tremors. I went colorblind for a little bit. I couldn't feel anything. I went numb. I've seen doctors and they were like, you should be dead for how long you're under this stress. So a cardiologist said to me, most people wouldn't last a month with this. How long were you in this? And I said 15 months. And he goes, I don't know how you made it out. Like, my blood was so thick that when you look at blood under a microscope, it looks like little like coins scattered on a table, like cells next to each other. Mine looked like coins stacked on top of each other. It was that thick. And my doctor was like, I don't know how you're walking around. You should have had a stroke or an aneurysm or a heart attack. And I'm like, man, I don't know. But when it's your time, it's your time. You can't negotiate that.
It's a jiu-jitsu.
Man, I was still training jiu-jitsu at the time, bro. So jiu-jitsu probably did save my life because it kept the blood flowing, the oxygen up. So yeah, grateful for that one, man.
Yeah, that's a good part. When we kind of exercise regularly, it saves us a lot of times, right? From these sure outcomes, kind of, right? Where doctors say the probability that you would have died is so high, right? But no, yeah.
Man, if I wasn't
trained for this,
trained for it, like, I'm super resilient, and it's like my dad died last year in February, and I was sitting on the edge of my bed, and my ex came in and she saw me and she's like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Like, are you feeling all right?" And I just remember sitting there thinking, I'm like, your dad only dies once. Let's see what you're made of. That's what it was for. And I said, I'm going to use this to my advantage. I went and trained that day. I did a podcast the next day, and I had 2 groups and one-on-one sessions on, and I showed up to all of them. I didn't miss any of them. And there's a recording actually with me in it where I said my dad died 2 days ago, where it's filmed, and I was showing up and still holding space for others. And that capacity only gets developed through difficult times. And I think as men, it's very important to put yourself constantly through difficult things. So when difficult things show up, we're able to handle them. And I say this too, it's been really interesting because I've been getting so many messages now from women saying, I hope my husband will come to you so you can train him, so you can help him, because this whole men need to be vulnerable and overly emotional, it's not working. And they're looking to me now going, I used to vilify you. I used to hate you. You used to trigger me. Now I'm begging my partner to come and see you because I can see that you got it right. And part of that is what I say to them, and this is what I train men in as well, is you want to become so psychologically unshakable. Your woman doesn't want to hear I love you. She wants to hear I'll handle it or I've got you. That's what she really wants. And that only comes from developing inner resolve through doing difficult things every single day. That's what we're built for. That's what we're built for as men. And when you put yourself into suffering, suffering doesn't become that difficult anymore. It's like, okay, I'm going to go do something hard because it makes me feel good. And there's a real sense of accomplishment in that, which I think we're missing in modern masculinity. So you've had your trials and made it through. Your gift has been you got 2 sons?
Yeah.
Awesome. My gift was being able to see the gift in the world and help others to break free. So it's worth it once you get to the other side.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my first son basically was also a catalyst with this whole journey, right? I always knew, I mean, we talked about this. I always knew what was going on, and like I was conscious of it, but I kept going because why not, right? And then you have like that little being there, and then you start thinking about it differently. Like life changes, right? I mean, I know plenty of men. They have like kids with different women, and they're all just with the woman. And I mean, if you just look into it a bit, you know what's going to happen, right? With boys, especially in fatherless homes. It's just, I mean, you can talk about that a little bit. I think it's definitely a topic.
Yeah, it's funny because I've taken the opposite stance around the vulnerability aspect, where it's vulnerability is strength. I don't agree with that, and the reason why I don't agree with it, I have a caveat. I don't talk about it from a place of major life transitions and major loss and major traumatic events. So, if you want to cry when your son's born, okay, like I would understand that. Like if I have a kid, I'll probably have tears come up. There'll probably be an overwhelming sense of love that comes through. You know, when my father died, I didn't cry till about 6 months because I was under such an immense amount of stress, but it was for a day. And then I released it and processed it. When there's a processing of deep trauma or shock, loss, pain, extreme suffering, that's not what I'm referring to when I talk about vulnerability as strength. Isn't strength. What I'm talking about is when you can't pay your bills, where your girlfriend leaves you, you know, where you're having a hard day and you want to emotionally dump on your girlfriend or your woman, it's going to make her feel psychologically unsafe and she won't trust you, and then she'll leave you for the very thing that society has told you to do. Now, there's nothing wrong with emotions. We all have emotions. But when we're ruled by emotions, we make bad choices. If you go back in your history, and I've done this that many times, every single decision that you regret will be done in an overwhelming emotional state, right? Feelings are not facts. This is why we love our women, because women are emotional. I love a very emotional woman. Absolutely love it, because she's in her feminine. Bring it on. I'm all about it. You're just not really going to get that out of me, because that's not what she needs. She needs me to be grounded, clear, stoic, calm, open, and emotionally available for her emotions. Not for me to sit around and cry because life's against me and I can't get my shit together. And we see this more and more where like men's groups they're doing ice bars and they're yelling into pillows and getting naked together and wrestling and all that. Besides they're getting naked together, those other things, you should just do those. Like if I'm bored, I'm like, I'll go grapple or I'll go to an ice bath or something. It's just part of the day. It's not something that's going to make me a man. So what it is about becoming a man is facing the inner parts of yourself that create the inner tension, that are a conflict of opposites that you're denying and projecting onto the world, your woman included. She's not your therapist, and we shouldn't make women our therapists. It's like, if you can't handle it yourself, get a therapist. If you can't get a therapist, take it to your bros. If you can't do that, go to a grappling mat or go to a boxing ring and get it out. I'm telling you, that's how it works. And you won't need to talk about it afterwards. Men, and I've been challenged on this a few things, but from the research that I've done, men process through left brain cerebellum. I'm pretty sure that's it. It's been a while since I checked this. So I'll give the general sense. Basically, we process things through movement. We don't process things by talking about them. And the statistics are, I think 80% of teachers are female. I don't know I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head about single mother households, but it's higher than male dominated single parent households. Therapists, I think 85% are female. So we're gearing our little boys, our young boys, and also the attack on masculinity and toxic masculinity out there in the lexicon. The whole of society is against raising healthy masculine boys. So like, this is on childwelfare.org, by the way. When I say this statistic, it's not to vilify anyone. It's not to tear anyone down. It's just a fact. The biggest abusers of children are women, the mothers. That's a statistical fact. It's not something I'm making up. It's a statistical fact. And that the most important factor in a child's development is a father being present. Because the father is, especially for boys, you know, the father is the protector. He's meant to be around. And so I care so much about this subject, and I get vilified for it continually, because I'm like, I was speaking to a woman today and she goes, how would you describe yourself? I'm like, I'm old school masculinity with heart. You know, I'm all about old school masculine. I'm about sacrifice, dying for the people that you care about, protecting them, being strong, being capable, you know, being calm, being stoic, and being the father. You know, in society, we have this vulnerability is strength thing, is women want to become mothers to men, and that creates inversion. Men become unstable, needy, erratic, demanding, and objectify women to meet every demand. I go the opposite way. What we have to become is we have to become like the fathers these women never had, which is fairness, which is grounded, and not the daddy thing, like that sort of weird daddy kind of stuff that's out there. But, you know, in a sense, the daddy thing as well, because it's like fairness. We make right, just decisions. We don't vilify or become emotionally explosive. We protect our women and children, and we can only do that when we turn inward and we face our internal demons and our internal battles. We process them, get rid of them, and then we become authentic, stable men with the absence of distortion. So there's a fair bit in that, but yeah.
No, it's great. Yeah, it's also what I believe in. You know, Buddha heart, demon hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I see it. you know, like, not to go into like Buddhism too much here, but like just the thought of it, right? Like exactly what you said, you have to be able to protect and provide. And on the other hand, you have to be, a big hearted guy to understand what's really going on. Right.
Yeah.
And if you are, if you have clouded judgment, if you have toxins running through your blood, you will always react differently, right? Like you will never react in a calm way when there's a little bit of stress coming. If your child is knocking at 5 a.m., on your pillow, you will react differently. It's just the way it is, right? I mean, I've had it myself. But yeah, that's what you said also with, smothering, right? Like goes into that, because that's what happened with me, right? Like my mother was overly, protective with me, and that's why I had to leave home. I left home when I was 15, right? And I worked through that basically, not really, I would say, until my late 20s. I started understanding that because I pushed it aside, right? And then the next time I really saw it was when she was interacting with my son. She was doing the same thing, and it triggered me. I'm like, fuck, there's still something there.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, but it's an interesting part, because I won't allow it now. Right. And I talked to her, and I hope we resolved it, because I found a different way also by re-listening to our session. I found a different way of articulating it to her, which I think is a way to go. Right. Like if she doesn't understand it the first time, you have to try 3 or 4 times. Right. But
I think that's important. Just quickly on that, Max, like there's the devouring mother, and the devouring mother will devour the child's potential in order to not lose the connection to the child. It's very similar to like a narcissistic mother in a devouring aspect. So usually the helicopter parent, the devouring mother, doesn't do it because they want to hurt the child. They do it because they care for the child, and they stress around letting the child go to break the bond. Whereas the narcissistic parent will try to destroy the child's sense of self so they can control them. It's all unconscious. And we can talk about narcissism if you like. But what you're doing is you're also saying, hey, no, this is my child. And I teach this to a lot of men I work with and women. Grandparenting is a right. Is a privilege, not a right. And if like my mother is deeply narcissistic, and I wouldn't when I have kids, I wouldn't let them around her. I wouldn't leave my children with a dangerous animal. And she's a psychologically dangerous animal. As much as I care for her, I don't speak to her. I don't have a relationship with her because I'm emotionally healthy. Emotionally healthy people can't really coexist with emotionally unhealthy people. And I wouldn't let her around my kids. I wouldn't expose them to that. My job as a man, our job as men, is to protect our children no matter what. So we don't impart the same things that we had to suffer. That's why we as men do the work.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's because I understood that so much that I had to go through was attached to that. Right. Because I always wanted to try new stuff. Right. Like, I don't know. I wanted to do kickboxing when I was 9. I think the first time it came to my mind. She didn't let me and stuff like that. Yeah. Right. Fear driven. It's too dangerous. You have to play piano. You're going to hurt your wrist. Right. So,
yeah.
Right. And now I am doing martial arts since a couple of years. And, it's just the way. And I know it would have helped back then. Right. Because it wouldn't have had the bullying going on and all that bullshit. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very important. I think you have to stand up, especially for your family. And if you take that shit, then it's on you, right?
That's absolutely. You're the man. You're the leader. And one important thing, to bring it. Actually, it's an interesting one. It's like the saying, "Blood is thicker than water." Right? Most people think blood of the family is thicker than the substance of water, and it's inaccurate. It's actually the blood of the cup of Christ, meaning those who we choose to congregate with, is thicker than the water of the womb for those who we're born with. And that's a very powerful statement when you know the truth of it, because family of creation supersedes and is meant to supersede family of origin. We're meant to split from our own family and go our own way so we can create our own family. The difficult part is the parents still see us as children and we're their child, but we're not a child anymore. And then they superimpose that demand, that control, that dominance hierarchy onto the child, even though we're both grown men. And it's like, no, that doesn't happen anymore. This is my child, my family. You either get in line and act the way that I say, or I'll have to keep you at a distance. And I think more people should adopt that attitude, to be honest, because grandparents can be pretty toxic. I've seen some really toxic stuff with grandparents.
Yeah, totally true. Yeah, I saw that with my sister's family. She died last year, and also had to go through, that phase, which was, not easy either. But with them, the grandparents on that side, I saw a lot of that stuff, right? Because I have four nephews, and like it's crazy, because then they try to, like play the kids against the parents and do all these games, and I'm like, fuck, man, like the only people suffering there are the kids, right? Like, do your shit out of this, right? Like, that's the sad part about it. And they're so innocent, right? They're young, they don't know what's going on. They get all fed all these lies, possibly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult stuff.
It is. And, one of the things I said on a podcast a little while ago, because we're talking about boomers, because boomers are emotionally useless. The boomer generation, they're just emotionally useless. And I posted about this around their insufficiency as adults. And because their parents were World War II generation. And one guy, he was a priest, actually, or a pastor or whatever you call it. And he said, he goes, this is the most ignorant, stupid post I've ever seen, because the previous generation, World War II generation, was too traumatized. So they passed it on to them and they couldn't deal with it. So have some compassion. And I said, no, I'm not going to have compassion for that. They're adults. They're responsible for their trauma. The most cowardly thing they can do is pass it on to innocent children. And that's what they've done. And you're saying that because it was too hard for them to deal with, oh, cool, I'll just give it to my kids. No, I'm sorry. That is the statement of a coward. And I said, and I don't respect you for that at all. And that's why I've cleaned up my history. So when I could easily sit there and go, oh, I'm the victim of narcissistic abuse and psychopathic abuse, and I spent time in prison and whatever. And I said, no, this is never going into my child. As much as I can do before I have them, I will take full responsibility for everything I've done. My kids, when they come along, won't even know what I grew up in. They won't even be conscious of it because I've done so much work around it. And people like that dude, and I'm sure he meant well and his heart was in the right place, but no, I don't cop that. No, every adult has a self-responsibility to own their own stuff, and they make children suffer because of it. And I don't stand for that. Definitely not.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, it's that concept of, you get slapped on one side and you give them the other side as well, right? Like that's what they teach in church. It's like, I never understood that one. It's mind-boggling. Yeah. The concept of the church, right? Like maybe we can go down that a little bit more, because I think it's interesting in these times and days, because just like you said, those basic concepts of not taking responsibility for your own actions and stuff like that, like it touches upon that whole over feminized society, right, as well, or whatever you want to call these males running around, right? And I have nothing against screaming into a pillow, but like if you have to do it 20 times in a row every month, then it's an issue, right? It's the same thing with psychedelics, right? Like they get addicted to ayahuasca sessions because it's a nice high for them, and then they never integrate. But I did psychedelics the last year and early last year, so that's over a year ago, and I think I fully integrated it, but I would have never like even dared to do anything in the meantime because it makes no sense. Right. So what do you think is going on there with these agendas that we have, these over feminized men? And surely it's over generational a bit. We had these generations where slapping the kid was fine, and I'm not saying it's not, but and then you have these over feminized kids and men, and like what's going on there?
Yeah, man, it's a good question. I did another podcast the other day, and the dude just messaged me today saying that he wasn't going to release it because he comes more from a place of compassion. And in the podcast, I mentioned about childwelfare.org and the biggest abuse of children being mothers, and he was raised in a single mother household. I was kind of like, I just said, yeah, no worries, man. I respect, if that's your thing, go for it. But I was going to say, what I don't respect is what you're doing is censorship. That's censorship. That's, if you're running a podcast, you should release that information. I know I can be hardline, I can be quite direct, and I'm well researched in what I look at. And in that, I said, he asked about the gender thing, and I said, I don't support it at all. And it's gender dysphoria was a mental illness. I was listed in the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual of Mental Illness, as far as I'm aware, unless they took it out. And I think Jordan Peterson spoke about it, that it's like a tiny percentage of people actually suffer from gender dysphoria. And now it's like in London, it's like 20% of kids are saying that they're transgender. I don't support that. I don't support it. It's influencing minds that are malleable, that are highly influenced, that are easy to control, and it's done in an indoctrinated system in the form of school. And I just think I will respect each human being and treat them with dignity and kindness. I won't get in someone's face and go, "You're this, you're that, whatever." Leave the children out of it, because the next generation. So, how do you traumatize a generation? You start a war. Pretty
Mm.
simple. So the war of our time is scientism and the gender war, right? That's basically it. It's a complete divorcing from our spiritual connection to God, from our biology, from nature, completely towards androgyny and scientism. And they're doing that, in my opinion, because it divorces the children from the parents. It makes the school system their authority, and then the state gets to raise children and keep destroying the family. The family is the strongest unit there is. It's the most naturally balanced triad, which is mother, father, child. The father should be in the masculine, the mother is the feminine. And there's a reason they split the family up in the 60s, was so they could tax women, and they did it under the guise of feminism. Now, I agree with every woman should have equal rights and get paid the same. That's not what I talk about when it comes to this. But if you invert that, you get women to compete with men all the time. Like I was saying to a woman just today, I said, I want my woman to be a complement, not a competition. I don't want to compete with my woman. I compete enough in the world.
Yeah.
I'm not there for that. And so society does that to keep everyone fractured and split. So it was man and wife split. That's been done. Well done. They've successfully created that. Now it's mother, father at odds. Now it's the children. We'll split the children from the mother and father and get the state to raise them. And we're just seeing these influences play out. And I think it's what the end goal is, I think, is just, I mean, there's a one world government, there's ultimate control, it's the anti-unification of the human species through religious wars, through dogma, through scientism, through jab, whatever it is, man. You know, I think we all know the people that would listen to this. But it's essentially to create a race of people that are easy to control, that don't think for themselves. If you can convince someone that they're opposite to the gender that they are, you've done a very good job at brainwashing people. You've done an excellent job at that. And I mean, I know I'm a man. I'm a high testosterone, territorial, aggressive, dominant male. I like that about myself. I'm very kind to children and women, but that's part of my biology. And I honor that. Like, if you're trying to tell me that I'm a woman, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But kids are impressionable. And I think it's our job as men to protect the innocent, regardless of what the innocent want at the time. You look 100 years ago, man, World War I and II, we had 16-year-old men signing up to go die on the front lines to fight a war to protect people. Now we get like men that can't handle if someone's clapping too loud because it's a fucking microaggression. Like, we've slipped a long way in 100 years, but I do believe the pendulum is swinging back the other way. Just in the couple of years I've been working in masculinity, I got vilified for saying that men shouldn't focus on being feminine. They should get their masculinity right. Then if they want to go focus on their feminine, fill your boots. But I've never taken a man from boy psychology to man psychology and him come back to me and go, cool, it's time for me to honor all my inner feminine goddess codes. Not one of them. Because I know what it takes to be a man. You know what it takes to be a man, Max. I want my woman to be my feminine counterpart. That's why women exist, to be my feminine counterpart. It's not about this, you know, me needing to bring out my inner goddess or my inner divine feminine so I can be a complete masculine. I had someone ask me that on one of my Q&As. Do you think that for men to become conscious masculine, they need the goddess to initiate them? And my response was, you must be a troll trying to bait me. Because it's absurd. And even the concept of the goddess. Can you imagine if you and I, bro, were walking down the street going, oh, I'm Zeus today, you know, or I'm Apollo, or whatever? It's delusional. It's grandiose. It's almost grandiose narcissism at play. It's like, just be a woman. I'm a man. I like to do certain things that men like to do. I'm not walking down the beach in the sun with my shirt off going, I'm Apollo today, you know, strutting down the beach like that. Can you imagine if we walk around saying that shit? It's just, man, it's crazy. But yeah, I'll leave that point there.
Yeah, I think it's probably business, you know, like, just, you know, that's kind of what they created. I think it's probably from the States, right? Like this goddess,
yeah,
spiritual course that you can get, and it's very extreme in this one hand, and it seems it works, right? I mean, apparently it gets bought. But yeah, to get back to that topic of the agendas, right? Like, I just talked to a guy, a couple podcasts ago. He lives in the States, and he told me that in the school where his some acquaintance kids goes to, it's they have litter boxes for cats, right?
Yes, man.
So we got to that point where where I don't even know what to say to that anymore, because it's just mind-boggling to me that you would even let your child go into that institution, right? If you knew that was going on there, right? I
Man,
mean,
crazy.
every little kid has that moment, where they wear the clothes of the opposite sex, they play with the toys of the opposite sex. It's not a problem, but if you reinforce that energy at that point in time, you might be able to keep them there, right? Like, if you tell them this is great, right, this is perfect, you look so much better with lipstick on, right, to a boy, what is he gonna think?
Yeah.
Right. And then obviously you look at the media, and you look at what they're watching at 3 years old, right? Like the Disney channels and all that hidden music.
Oh,
and
man.
you
It's
know
evil, that stuff. Yeah.
the more you look into that and all the hidden penises and shit, like it's nasty.
Yeah.
But every parent should deal with that themselves. But like, I'm not gonna let some other parent influence my kid, right? That's why I'm very let's say opposed to the normal kindergartens and the school system and stuff like that. So I will be very cautious where I'm going to put my kids, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, I agree with you, man. It's an important thing, I have people come to me and ask me about that, and I just said, it's like arguing with people like that. Mark Twain said it the best. It's like, never argue with a fool. They'll bring you down to their level, then beat you with experience. And it's such a perfect quote for that. And it's like, they got litter boxes for cats. It's like, I'm not going to fight that system. I just take my kid out. You just walk away. That's what I always say. It's like, don't fight the system. Just don't partake in it.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, in my opinion, was a good thing about the COVID years, because that showed you what you're up against, right?
Yeah.
Like in Germany, I know exactly what went on because of my nephews, and they separated them from their friends, had the windows open in the winter. It's like the whole thing, and like, how the hell do you still leave your kids in that system if you see that?
Yeah.
I mean, it is difficult to get them out in Germany, because they will pick you up with the police eventually, right? Because you have to put them in school, and you have to leave them in school. But if you really want to change something, then you can, right? But then again, it's a safe job. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to change something. I'm gonna have to change country. Like, it's impossible. All my friends are here.
Yeah. I think it goes to the point of like, what are you willing to sacrifice for the integrity of your life?
Exactly. I mean, what's more important than the well-being of your family, in my opinion, right? Then just moving cities or countries shouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, no, I've done that. I moved out of Sydney to Byron Bay, which is 8 hours away, and this is my home, and I love it here. But man, if shit gets really hectic, which I don't really see it being pulled off, man. I just don't really see the whole system, the whole agenda being pulled off. They've royally fucked it up in so many ways, and the people that aren't awake to it, like, all right, you're on your own path. Like, I'm not talking about you, but there's a lot of people that have woken up to what's going on in the world, and there's a lot of people that don't want to partake in it. And sometimes it's like, as you would know, when you face the pain, you got to look at the darkness that's going on, and the darkness has been revealed in society now. And people that would never have thought about it are not complying to just these people in government to say, you need to do this. There's going to be an interesting shift coming. I think what I see is a split in society where people will be using crypto, Bitcoin, and just congregating on themselves, but still part of the system, but not partaking in one side. I had a good friend of mine, Dan, say to me, he goes, you can't contain the human spirit. You can try and you can do everything you can, but usually there's 4-year cycles. That's why wars last for 4 years. COVID lasts for 4 years. There's these 4-year cycles. And you can kind of control people for a little bit, but over time, the spirit gets restless and they go, no. That's why it's happened like over and over and over again throughout history. There's always rebellion. There's always control. And then people go, nah, we're not going to do this, and we'll fight against it. The difference between now and I think what happened back then, there is something in our consciousness that is evolving. There's something going on. There's something higher that's coming through. I don't know what that is. I'm not the architect of the universe, but there's something going on, man. I can feel it, I can see it, and it's happening. There's a flowering of consciousness that's going on that I don't think's happened on this planet before.
Mm. Yeah,
And
I'm a
I'm here
big,
for it.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm a big believer in astrology as well. I spent some time with that field, and not personally like, learning it too much, but like working with people. And
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely that there's a shift going on, right? Like everybody that's conscious and that got all these toxins out of the way, they can feel it. I'm
Yeah.
100% certain about that as well, right? It's just that time, and I think that's what's so valuable about these conversations, right? Which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this, is that we talk about this, right? I
Yeah.
think that was also my reservation that I had with myself in my 20s. I never wanted to talk about this because like the world is fucked up, right? Like there's no way I can change anything, until I understood, okay, that one person, that's enough high vibrational can actually offset, many, many more on the other end. And then it clicked for me. Then it's like, shit, I can really change something, even if it's just me, and a couple others, right? And so that's why, I try to do this and try to talk to people that obviously also on that path. I'm not gonna, get in like an idiot on the pod. So that's kind of my goal with this. Let's talk a bit about the business side of your business, because
Mm-hmm.
I heard you talk about, because you got pretty big, and I know you're super busy, and like you raise your prices, and you also talked about scaling and stuff like that. Like what's your what's the situation there? How do you look at the business side of things?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, man. Someone asked me, because I do Q&As regularly. I really enjoy the Q&As because I get super interesting questions all the time. It's been funny because the most common question I get is if I'm single, and then now the women have changed, like, "Hey, what's your birth chart details?" Talking about astrology. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Nice try." Like, yeah, I can see what you're doing. The business side of things, I had someone ask me. She goes, "Don't you think you could help more people if you would?" I don't know if she said offered it for free or cheaper.
Mm.
And I said, actually, I'm booked out for months at my current rate. And what I've found, the people that, except a couple, the people that I've helped for free, for the most part, have been the biggest pain in the ass. They demand the most, they take the most, they don't respect your time. The amount of people that ask me to go for a coffee to pick my brain, I'm
Mm.
like, okay, so you want to give me $5 and buy me a coffee? Thanks, but I can buy my own fucking coffee. And you want me to travel to see you, to meet you, so you can trauma dump all over me and I can solve your problems while you value my time at $5 an hour. I'm like, this sounds arrogant, right? In the way I say it, but this is me exercising my worth. I wasn't always the prices that I'm at the moment, but I know what I offer. I know what I bring to the table. And I like people that just go, I'm in here, because they invest in themselves. That means they'll work with me in the right way. People that want stuff for free. I mean, I give so much away for free online already, and I'm a massive resource that helps people for free anyway. I do courses that are cheaper than my one-on-one stuff. And so I look at it from that perspective and I go, I give away enough. And it's like, it's draining work. It's hard for me to do it. When I'm doing 2 or 3 sessions in a day, you've been with me. It's like the person isn't talking the most and I'm just listening to the problem. I'm excavating parts of their psyche. It's a very different model to traditional therapy. So relative to that, it's stepping further and further away from one-on-one stuff, and I just teach therapists now. That's my main model, where I choose the people I teach. I'm very selective about it because this kind of work can be like giving dynamite to children. It can be
Mm.
used irresponsibly if the person isn't equipped and understands it effectively. So the thing I looked at with scaling, I've got a couple of big players that want to take me really big, but not at the cost of the quality of the work. So while people might see, oh, I'm just about the money, I charge a lot, there's deals that, are well into 7 figures that people want to take me into. And I'm like, no, because the quality of my work will suffer. And then I become a business manager as opposed to doing this work. Having these conversations like this with you, speaking like this online, helping people and teaching people, I love it, man. I don't need money. I've got plenty of money already. I don't need money. So someone offering me $2 million a month, that doesn't do anything for me. I don't need more Rolexes and more Ferraris and all that sort of stuff. I'm good. I'm not doing this just for the money. I'm doing it to live a good life, which I live a very good life. But I also define my worth by the size of the problem I'm going to solve, and I charge for that relatively to what I believe is right. But I'm not going to sell out. That's the thing. And I've been offered some good money to sell out. And I'm like, nah, because I love doing this work, being engaged with someone. This is what I'm here for. And I made a deal that whoever needs my voice gets it with God. I basically said, if this is what I'm supposed to do, whoever needs my voice will get it. And I give it to everyone that actually requests it, that I feel is going to benefit from the work. So scaling can be an interesting thing because I've done that. I've had businesses with multiple employees, and you lose the passion for why you started. And then you just start to manage people. And I'm like, I don't want to get a lawyer and an accountant. I don't want to have a receptionist. I don't want to have staff. I don't want to be managing their staff. I'd like doing my one-on-one. And if that means I don't make $20 million a year and I just make $1 million a year, I'm okay with that. I can live on that kind of cash, So it's important for me that scaling doesn't interrupt the integrity of the work. And so I've said no to these people that wanted to take me really big. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll do it organically, but I have to maintain the connection to the people that I work with. And that's what I'll always do.
Yeah, it's also about authenticity, right? Like, you actually look yourself in the mirror and you're proud of yourself. Because I think that's once you kind of get into that realm, right? And you understand the universe, or at least you try to. And the more you go into that sphere, it's like, okay, am I true to what I want, the gifts that I can give to the world? And if I digress from that path, doesn't matter how much money you get for that, I will know it will hurt. I know it will hurt me down the line, right? Like that's kind of what happens, right?
100%, man. And you compromise on your integrity if you compromise on the integrity of the work that you give to the world. And so it doesn't feel like a real expression for me to just go, cool, let's just put all these courses together, mass market it. You can make $2 million a month, and then you're going to be loaded. I'm like, I've been loaded before. I lost it all. It doesn't matter about that to me. It's like, I like getting up and working and putting myself into the positions with people. I'm like, it's a fascinating game for me. If I just wanted the money, I wouldn't work anymore because I've got enough money to not work for a long time. So why wouldn't I just do that? But that's not it. That's not what this gift was given to me for. And this is what I'll do for the rest of my life. And it will always be my number one priority to serve and help others and to get this out there. Before I was like, cool, I'll work with a lot of people one-on-one. And I did. Now I'm like, the best thing I can do is train other people how to do this so they can go and help other people as well. I can't do that if I'm just doing online courses and selling a bunch of them. It's like you don't need 3 Ferraris or whatever, like 5 Porsches, 4 houses. That's just weight, man. That's just weight. And when I do this work and have conversations like this with you, which is stimulating, they're sharp, they're on point, my energy goes up. So I judge the most valuable thing that I give is how my energy feels after I've had an interaction. And so when I do stuff like this, like I never work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, man, never. But I made an exception for you because I was like, I like Max. We get on. This is cool. And I'm like, and I've got a lot of energy now, so that's my exchange. If my energy's high after an interaction or a session or my friends or whatever, I follow that path because my body is telling me, my soul's lit up. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. This is good. And that's how I live life. No amount of money is going to be able to buy that for me.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. Also, I helped a lot of people before, they would come to me and I'm like, fuck, she needs help. I let them in, let them sleep at my place. And then, later I'm fucking regretted it, right? Like it just exploded, all the shebang, right? And that's what it is. Like if we are not on point, if we don't protect our energy, we're not good to the people closest to us. And that's, that's what we need to learn. I mean, I had to learn it the hard way. You probably as well.
Yeah, we all do, man. We learn the hard way, bro. They're the best lessons, man. It's like I went through my shattering and I wouldn't change it, man, because I was like, everything I speak about, like face yourself, do it, be a man, show up. Mate, I got put in under the grindstone. Like I was in the pestle and mortar of the universe, just grinding me down, pulverizing me into nothing. Going, all right, you want to be a fucking masculinity coach? Let's put you through it. And I got put through it, and I would never change that. And I love every minute of it now because it's given me the gift of life and what it means to be a man. And I can sit there and say, man, I fucking earned my place. No one gave it to me. I earned it by going into it. And that's just what you have to do, man. And it's worth it. It's fucking worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful said. I think we ended here, man, because then we're going to digress in other topics, and I know you got to go. So
we could man, I wish I'd spent more time because I got to go out to dinner.
Yeah, of course.
But let's
Yep.
do it again, man. Like I enjoyed this. It was cool,
Yeah,
bro. I've
pleasure.
always got
Thank you,
time
man.
for you, Max, and I'd love to
Thank
come
you.
on again.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for your time, man.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode to the end. If you got any value out of this, please like and subscribe or share it with a friend. This would help the channel a lot. Thank you for that. And I hope I will see you on the next one.